Today we're going to be doing something called Bolognese. And a Bolognese is an Italian meat sauce. Now, Bolognese in Italy is kind of similar to chili in America. For every household, there's a different chili recipe, and in Italy, for every household, there's a different Bolognese recipe. Today we're going to be doing Bolognese alla Walter. And it's a lot of fun to make. It's easy to do once you've got all of everything is in place. It's known as your mise en place. And once you have everything, all your vegetables chopped up, your meat ready, your sauces laid out, it's very simple to do. This is a great meal to make for a large family because it stretches, it goes a long way, and it lasts a long time. The other advantage to it is that it freezes very well. So you can freeze what you don't use and use it the next time you need it. As I said, it's a meat sauce. It goes great for lasagna. It goes great with tagliatelle, linguine, spaghetti, any kind of pasta that you'd like to use it for, it can go well with. Hey everybody, it's Walter from Artistic Gourmet Adventures. My wife Kim and I own this unique small group tour company where we host groups of 6 to 12 guests for 1 week luxury adventures in beautiful locations throughout Europe and the United States. I have the privilege of being the adventure chef, creating and preparing daily gourmet meals for our guests. We also enjoy creating in-home private dinners for clients and friends when we're back in the States. Many of our guests request our recipes and want to learn cooking tips. So, in this video series, from our cozy home kitchen here in the beautiful Loire Valley of France, we will demonstrate a wide variety of recipes, from culinary classics to originals, as well as covering professional kitchen techniques for the home chef. For more information on Artistic Gourmet Adventures, check our website, linked in the description below. Now, let's start cooking! So to get started with a Bolognese, as I said, we're using 3 different kinds of meats. The first meat is some beautiful ground beef, and we've got some sausage, some pork sausage that's been ground, as well as some bacon. And these are called lardons in France. You can buy them this way. In the States, you may want to buy some thick bacon and just cut them into little strips, but that's basically what that is. That's a lardon. Now for our aromatics, we're going to be using a what's called a mirepoix, and a mirepoix is really just a mixture of vegetables. So in this mixture, I've diced up some onions, some red onions, some green peppers, some red peppers, some orange peppers, and some carrots, and that's going to be for our flavor there. And then the next thing we're going to use is we've got some minced garlic, a couple of cloves of minced garlic. And for a little bit of kick, we're going to use some red pepper flakes. And these can be the dried red pepper flakes. You can use fresh chili peppers if you want, but the dried red pepper flakes really work well. And we also will be using some canned tomatoes. These are, I've got a large can of crushed tomatoes. You can use whole tomatoes and then crush them yourself with a potato masher or something like that. But some crushed tomatoes. And we also have some tomato sauce that we'll use. Just depends on how much sauce comes up when you add your tomatoes into your meat. It determines how much of that you're going to need. And then the next thing that we're going to use is a really fine quality concentrate of tomatoes. So this is basically called tomato paste in the States, but I would encourage you to buy the stuff in the tubes. First of all, it stays fresher longer if you don't use the entire thing, and it's highly concentrated and it just delivers a little bit more flavor. And then we're just going to add a little bit of brown sugar, and what brown sugar does is sometimes it'll help to neutralize the acid a little bit. And then we'll finish with some fennel seeds and oregano, and as well as some basil leaves, and this is actually an important part of it. So I've got probably about 12 whole basil leaves that I've just loosely wrapped in cheesecloth. and we're going to deglaze our pot with some red wine, and that'll give us all of our flavors. Okay, so to get started, we've got our lardons and we've put them inside of our cocotte, or our big stock pot. We've covered them with a little bit of water, and we brought that to a simmer, and we're just going to let that cook for 5 or 10 minutes until those lardons are cooked. Not looking for crisp here, we're just going to cook them through, and then we're going to drain them and set them aside. Okay, as you can see, our lardons are cooked through. They're not crispy at all. That's all we want, is just for them to be cooked through. And I'm telling you what, just tasting these lardons right now, the flavor is fantastic. So we're going to take them out and let them drain. So now we are just, we have removed our lardons from the pot, and we've cleaned our pot. Now we're just covering the bottom of the pot with some oil. And in this case, I'm using grapeseed oil, and as opposed to olive oil. The reason being, grapeseed oil has a higher smoke point, and it gets hotter without burning. So we've got that in there, and as you can see, I had my pot actually hot before I put that in there, so the oil gets hot pretty quick. And so now we're just going to add all of our vegetables in. And we are actually looking to sweat these vegetables, basically saute them until they're soft and translucent. We're not looking to develop any color on the vegetables. We're just looking to just get them soft, start bringing some of those flavors out. Now, one of the things I like to do when I'm doing vegetables is to season my vegetables. So we're actually going to add just a little bit of salt to there. And this makes a really big difference in your final product if you'll season your vegetables, really any dish, if you'll season as you go. So I've got some coarse salt, and now I'm just grinding in some fresh black pepper. So we're going to let those vegetables cook 3 or 4 minutes just to soften up. And as you can see, we have not added our garlic yet. You don't want to add garlic at the same time that you add the rest of your vegetables, because garlic tends to burn quickly. So we're just softening these vegetables, and once they cook 3 or 4 minutes and get soft, we're going to add our garlic. Well, as you can see, our vegetables are now nice and soft, and this is what you call sweating vegetables. So basically you've removed the moisture, brought out a lot of the moisture from the vegetables, and this is the point at which we can add our garlic so that it does not burn. In this case, we're going to add our garlic, and we're going to add back in our lardons. We'll get those vegetables some nice bacon flavor, and we're going to let that cook 2 or 3 minutes just to get that bacon flavor into all those vegetables. Okay, let that go for 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, our vegetables and lardons have been going for about 3 or 4 minutes now, so we are now just going to remove those from the pot. As you can see, our vegetables have been removed from the pot, all of our vegetables and lardons. Now we're just going to go to the step of browning our meat. And actually, before we do that, let's just add a little bit more oil to the pan, just so things don't stick. And I'm just going to break the meat up as we put it in there. And this step, you want to make sure that you don't crowd the pan so that you are continuously actually browning the meat and not steaming the meat. So continuing to brown our beef, we're doing it in stages. So like as I said, so we didn't steam the meat, because if you overcrowd the pan, rather than searing and browning, the meat is just going to steam, and it's not going to give you that nice brown that you want. And some of you may wonder why I added a little oil to the pan. In France, when you have beef cut from the butcher, and I'm just giving this a little bit of seasoning, a little bit of salt and pepper, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But in France, when you get beef from the butcher, most meats, they are trimmed quite well, and they leave a little bit less fat than what we would like. So that's why I had to add oil to the pan as I did that. And you saw me adding a little bit of salt and a little pepper to this. As I said earlier, I like to season as we go. It's just light seasoning. It's not a final seasoning, but that just builds up flavor as you go on in stages. All right, so we are finishing our meat. We have just now browned our pork meat, and now we're going to add back in our beef. So we have all of our meat in the pot. We are just kind of stir those together. And make sure everything is just stirred very well together and thoroughly browned. Now we're going to add our cooked vegetables and our lardons back in. Just going to stir everything together. And we are over pretty high heat at this point, not blazing hot, but I would say medium high. And at this point, we are now ready to add our tomato paste, our tomato puree. Okay, so we're just going to squeeze in a couple of tablespoons of our tomato concentrate, and let's just get that thoroughly mixed into everything. Really starting to develop some flavor here. And once you've had a chance to stir that tomato puree, that concentrate, into your meat really well, and again, the fire is still pretty hot. We are now. I like just having a little where I can see the bottom of the skillet, and now we're just going to deglaze the pan with a little bit of our red wine. And so, yep, we'll get that nice and mixed in, and we'll cook that probably 2 or 3 minutes. Because what we want to do is we want the flavor. This is to enhance the flavor of this sauce. We don't really want the alcohol from the wine. We just want the enhancement from the flavor. And at this point, we can also add in our dried chili peppers. We didn't add those in earlier. Now, just a point: if you're using fresh chili peppers, you want to put those in at the same time as you do the garlic. But using dried chili peppers, we don't need to do that. So we'll just put our dried chili peppers in. And we will also add in our fennel seeds, our oregano, and our brown sugar. And we'll give that a nice stir. Make sure everything gets thoroughly incorporated. And again, any of these seasonings at this point, after you've cooked this a little bit, if you just give it a quick taste and you think it needs a little bit more, go ahead and do that. I wouldn't do salt just yet. Because that's going to be something you want to do at the very end. You don't want to get it over salted and then not be able to turn back. Okay, meat's been cooking for 3 or 4 minutes now. The wine has been has pretty much evaporated. All the alcohol from the wine is evaporated. So let's now add in our tomatoes. Okay, we've got our tomatoes added, and now we're just going to add in our tomato sauce. Just a bottle of tomato sauce. This is pretty thick, so what you can do is just get a little bit of water in that jar of the tomato sauce. And this way you can loosen up all the sauce that's stuck. A little bit of water. And you don't want to do too much, but this is a way you can kind of clean that tomato sauce out of the jar, and add that back into your sauce. And we can drop in our basil leaves at this point. And just stir those in. At this point, I like to take a little bit of a taste of the sauce and see where we are. Okay, it's very good, and it's far from being well seasoned. We still need to add a little bit more salt to it, and we can add a little bit of black pepper. So we'll do a little bit of that for right now, just so it's cooking into the sauce as we go along, and then we'll adjust at the very end if we need to. Now, if your mixture is still too thick at this point, and you want to add a little bit more, you want it to be a little bit looser, you're welcome to add some chicken stock to it, or like I said, you can add a little bit of water, that kind of thing. But this is the consistency we're looking for, and now we just let that cook. We'll probably loosely cover it here in a second. We'll let it cook for 45 minutes to an hour, and we'll be ready to go. All right, so we've got everything in, and now we've got everything has kind of come up to a nice boil. We're going to turn our pot down now to a simmer. There we go. We don't want it boiling. We just want a nice simmer. And we'll let that, we're going to loosely cover that, and we'll let it simmer for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then we'll come back and check it. So our bolognese has been going for about 45, 50 minutes, maybe an hour. And let's just check it out. Oh, there we go. And it's nice, it's saucy, it's thick. Looks like everything has come together. And actually we did this for an hour. You could actually let it go for another hour or so. Honestly, it's kind of like chili or stews. Almost the longer you cook it, the better it is. And probably the next day it's going to be even better. We've got a nice bowl of handmade pasta, which we'll eventually get around to doing a little video on how to make homemade pasta. But I've made a tagliatelle here. And so we're just going to ladle some of our sauce into the bowl over this pasta. Just like so. Maybe a little bit more sauce. Okay. And let's grate a little bit of Parmigiano Reggiano. And this is a really nicely aged cheese. This is an 18-month Parmigiano Reggiano. For heaven's sake, if you go to the trouble of making homemade bolognese and homemade pasta, don't go and buy a pre-grated Parmesan cheese. Get a wedge of beautifully aged Parmigiano Reggiano because the flavor is amazing. And let's just finish it with a little bit of basil leaf. And also a nice little touch a lot of times to something like this is a beautiful olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, not the stuff you cook with, but extra virgin olive oil, and a nice red wine. And there we have it, Bolognese alla Walter with homemade tagliatelle. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, give us a thumbs up below and hit that subscribe button, it's free. And ring the bell if you want to be notified as soon as we release a new video. Also, let us know in the comments if you have any special recipe requests. We really appreciate you tuning in. See you next time.